No. Oh, there it is.
All right.
Okay.
That didn't come off so well, but that's okay. We can live with it.
I
That didn't come off so well, but that's okay. We can live with it.
We're having technical issues here.
This is the first time we've had technical issues since John has been on. So that's okay. This is the first time we've had technical issues since John has been on. So that's okay. I'm sure we'll get it all sorted out in the end. In the meantime,
Nick, what are you doing? Nick, what are you doing now, Nick?
I know what it is. My fault. Hang on. I'll kill it right now. Hang on.
He's got a browser open.
I know what it is. There we go.
All right.
I was trying to post a link from Blast the Radio for the show to my Facebook page, and it was playing
in the background.
That's right. That's so my bad.
All right. Not the first time that's happened.
No, it isn't. So
anyway.
So the whole point.
So hang on. Wait a minute. Hold on. Ladies and gentlemen, he's Nick, I'm Joe, and you are listening to the Nick and Joe Show.
We're in the middle of the danger zone. I got to tell you, Joseph, I went and saw the movie. I couldn't wait. I've been waiting for 2 years to go see this movie. I loved the first one, and I wanted to go see it because I love aircraft. And who does? If you didn't like the first one, I don't think he had a pulse.
Hey, airplanes and Navy. What more can you want?
Worked for me.
Yeah.
And speaking of Navy, there you go. Hello, Chrissy. And there's Laurentian Terry. He's there. He's in the chat room as well. So that's cool. We're seeing some people pop up in the chat room. When I went and saw this movie, first of all, I stopped at one point. I'd watched a bunch of trailers and heard a bunch of comments about it. And I said, you know what? I'm going to stop watching it. I'm going to stop paying attention to all the different trailers and so on. I don't want to build my expectations up so high that no movie's ever going to be able to satisfy it. So about 6 weeks out, I quit watching I just put myself on a hiatus. And when I went to see it, we saw it at a drive-in theater. My wife and I went out to a place called Dryden that has one of the few remaining drive-in theaters that I know of in Ontario. Now, there's probably more, but I think there's two I know of, and this is one of them. And we watched it through the windscreen of my pickup truck with bug guts splattered all over it, but we loved it. It was unbelievable. It was just a fantastic thing. And the thing about it, yes, it's an American movie. Yes, it's a lot of, American rah-rah, that kind of stuff. But you expect it. Look, it's like I said, it's an American movie with Tom Cruise about their military. So, of course, there's going to be a little bit of flag waving in it and so on. You expect that, and you can forgive that. If it was a Canadian movie, not that we'd ever make one like that, but if we ever did, you'd expect the same thing. And any other nation would do that, would probably be a kind of a rah-rah thing for their own guys. That only makes sense. The couple of things that struck me about the movie, and some of the comments that have flown from people who've seen it, they never identify the enemy. They never say, this is Russia, this is Iran, this is any of these things. They just have this benign enemy that they have a mission to go and accomplish. Now, if you haven't seen it, I don't want to give too much away, but it was just a great story about people overcoming tremendous odds to accomplish something. And it was just pure entertainment. And that's all it was intended to be. And I watched some commentators. I watched a guy who is from the American JAG, a military lawyer, go through the movie talking about all the laws that got broken in the movie from a military. Guys, it's a movie. Who cares? Should he buzz the tower? No, he shouldn't buzz the tower. You don't do that in real life, but it's a movie. This is the characters, that's part of the guy, the character of the guy that's making the movie. So knock off that kind of stuff. I've seen fighter pilots dissect the movie, and yes, this is realistic. No, it's not. Most of them thought, overall, it was really very well done because they had the Navy and Top Gun at Myanmar go through and help them do this. And they actually shot the movie from the cockpit of the airplane. They had 6 IMAX cameras that the actors had to run themselves while they're flying, because you can't have somebody with the camera outside the cockpit taking the shots. So there was a lot of creativity, a lot of inventiveness to get the kinds of shots that they got in that movie. And it's just I don't know how we'll ever make a movie that is closer to reality than that movie was, for pure adrenaline point of view, from the point, flying around in a high performance fighter like that. Look, it was just lots of nice little nods to the original. It didn't dwell on it, but it mentioned it, brought back a few of the characters, or referred to the characters that were in the original one. I can't see what wasn't to like about it. Yes, Craig, you should be sorry you're late, but we're glad you joined us. Thank you. Anyway, I just was I can't recommend it high enough. Go and just sit and experience it. Watch it on the biggest screen you can. If you have the ability to watch it on IMAX, go do that, because you will not be sorry.
Well, I haven't seen it yet. And I have to tell you, I'm a little disappointed to learn that they don't seem to mention an enemy. That, as you said, I find. I mean, I'm not saying they have to, but if you're going to be, and I haven't seen the movie, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm assuming that they have some air-to-air action here. And so one wonders who the enemy would be that can afford to have high performance fighter planes dogfighting with US Navy planes. Okay, but they're unnamed. I mean, it's not ISIS, it's not the Taliban.
Well, they wanted to keep it apolitical. They didn't want to get involved in world politics. They just wanted to tell a story.
Okay, so I'm not knocking the movie. Don't get me wrong. I haven't seen it, and from an entertainment point of view and an action point of view, it sounds like it's the real deal. It is. I'm going to have to go out and see it, Nick. Yep. No problem, no question about it. But if you want to be apolitical, okay, it just seems to me that when you're avoiding naming an enemy in a movie of this kind, that's not apolitical. In fact, that is political. In fact, you're trying to be politically correct. You don't want to offend anybody.
Oh, wait till you go see it
okay,
first.
in this world today, I would say that there are real people, real regimes out there that we ought not to be that afraid to offend. I'd put Iran pretty close to the top of the list.
China.
I think you have to count China in there.
Yep.
And probably even Russia. So it's the fact that you're not including any of these countries potentially, to me, that's not an apolitical statement. To me, it's a consummately political statement.
Well, here, all I can say to that, Joseph, because like I said, I don't want to give anything away for those who haven't seen it yet.
Okay.
But, and yes, by the way, Craig, we are talking about Top Gun Maverick, and yes, Woodenhead, I see you there. Welcome to the show. You must be Dutch, I think, with a name like Woodenhead. And the rest of that sentence is wooden shoes and wouldn't listen. But just go and see it.
Nick's allowed to say that because he's of Dutch heritage.
That's exactly right. Wooden head, right. Wooden shoes, wouldn't listen.
Right.
So anyway, that's anyway. I'm done with the Dutch jokes. But the point is that it is very entertaining. And is it a perfect movie? Well, I don't think you can make a perfect movie. I think you can make excellent movies, and I think this falls into that category. It made $569 million in its first weekend, and it only dropped. I was watching one commentator talk about it afterwards, who follows movies and what their box office success is week to week, and even a Marvel movie like a DC movie or a Marvel movie like Spider-Man or things like that, they tend to drop by 65% the second weekend. This one only went down to 30. So the retention of this thing will make $1 billion before it's all said and done. No problem at all. So, and it's just.
So I'm just thinking to myself, I guess I guess that means that Tom Cruise's Scientology chapter is making a lot of money off this movie.
I have no idea what he's doing.
Should I have said that?
Yeah, look, as an actor, I have a tremendous amount of respect for Tom Cruise. Okay. He's a brilliant actor, great director. He's at the top of his form and probably one of the best in Hollywood right now at making movies. Outside of that, in his personal life, let's just say I reserve comment.
Okay, well, yeah, his personal life is his personal life.
That's right.
I was not. I may have been accurate, but I wasn't being fair.
Okay, yeah. I'm only interested in, like, I would love to sit and talk airplanes with him for a day or a week. I would do that all day. Right. He has a high performance jet. He's got a P-51. He flies helicopters. He's one of the most qualified pilots in North America.
Okay.
And they even asked the U.S. Navy if he could actually fly an F-18 because all the shooting was done with them in the back seat, although you can't tell because of the camera. And the Navy politely turned them down, and I think I know why. You've got an $80 million airplane, a multi-million-dollar star, and if something bad should happen, a spin crash, burn, die kind of scenario, that's bad on everybody. And they just said, no. Well, you get to ride in one. What's that?
He can afford to pay for the airplane,
assuming he lives through it.
Well, he's insured. I'm sure somebody's insured him.
I'm sure he is, but they just didn't want to take that chance. And to tell you the truth, I don't blame them. It's there's a heck of a risk when you do that. Even if, because I'm sure he could handle it. He put them through 3 or 6 months worth of boot camp to get them ready to handle the G forces without getting sick. Because it's something, if you or I were get into the backseat of an F-18 and let the pilot just fly it the way, they're conditioned to fly it, we'd be with the boarding pass and just into the boarding pass, getting sick from all the violent maneuvers and the G forces that we're not used to. And it took a long time to get them beyond that so they could perform without having to. He tells a very funny story first about the first time he went up in an F-18. He had his pilot's name was Joker or Bozo. That's it. And he felt the nausea coming on, so he reached down to grab his bag, and he kind of leaned forward and put the bag up to his mouth just as Joker pulled back on the stick. And now he's got 5 or 6 G's pressing him down, and he's puking into the bag, but he can't straighten up. And he said it felt like it took forever. And finally he goes, Bozo, what made you do that? You didn't tell me, you didn't even ask. And the guy says, well, they call me Bozo for a reason.
and the other thing to keep in mind is that those G forces affect, what's actually coming up too.
Yes, they do.
Yeah. So, but in that case, the application of force is in the right direction.
That's true, but when you're all of a sudden you're slammed into 5 or 6 G's and you're bent over, now you can't straighten up because your head weighs like 800 pounds.
Now we're starting to sound like again one of these movie review shows. But while we're on the subject, how they did the negative G scenes in Apollo 13 was they actually went up in a plane.
Yeah,
with the set built up in the plane,
right?
And they had to, basically they had to do some negative G maneuvers.
They call it the vomit rocket,
and that's how they did those negative G scenes. But they had to do that over and over and over and over again just to get the scenes right. Forget about the takes, but even just so. But that's a very interesting subject in and of itself, because you think about G-force, you're always thinking about the positive G-force, but you don't really think about the negative G-force.
Well, the negative G's are harder on you than our positive G's, and it's harder on the airplane too. One of the reasons that there is one maneuver they pull in the movie, and I don't think I'm giving much away. When they come up the side of a mountain, they flip over and they pull down like that, so they don't get the negative G's, and they can. And once they get over the lip of the mountain, then they roll back over again, so they're on target much faster. And people will figure that out. It really was a movie. And yes, Kirk, I remember very well the F-14s, buzzing us, 100 feet off the water. I remember a Tupolev Bear doing it too, a Russian anti-submarine aircraft and surveillance aircraft going by. We could hear it in the boiler room. It was loud.
Yeah, anyway, those old Bears.
Wow, they're twin counter-rotating propellers and 4 engines, and that really made them loud. The Russians don't care about crew comfort. I don't know how those guys didn't go deaf, but we could hear it running along at 14 or 15 knots. We could hear it down in the boiler room. Anyway,
didn't you know that those were like, if you would have asked the pilots, they would have said that they were the quietest engines in the world because they were Soviet inventions.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Well, the Soviets invented everything from the anvil to the hammer. It's funny. Nothing's ever invented outside of the Soviet Union.
I had to think about that for a second. Wasn't it a scythe? It's a scythe. It's not an anvil, right?
Well, yeah, that's
the saying might be anvil, but on the flag it was a scythe. It was a scythe and a hammer.
A hand sickle.
A hand sickle. Well, okay, yeah.
Sickle and hammer. Yeah. Hammer and sickle.
A hammer and sickle. Like we used to call them scythes.
Yeah, scythe. Most people don't know what a scythe is, and a scythe is actually two-handed.
Right, because it's larger. I get it.
Yeah.
The hammer and sickle.
That's right. So by all means, if you get a chance, don't. If you get a chance, go and see this movie. You'll be thoroughly entertained, and I think my own impression is this will be another landmark movie, just like the original was.
So Nick.
Yes.
For people who have been listening to our show over the last 3 years plus, from time to time, they have heard us talking about what it has been, and we haven't described it this way, but I'm going to say it. What it has been, literally, has been Canada's longest undeclared war.
That's right.
Okay, Canada's longest undeclared. Now, I'm not exaggerating. They're thankfully, the belligerent forces never actually shot at one another. But this was Canada's longest war, undeclared, and that was between the Kingdom of Denmark and Canada.
That's right.
Over the remote, somewhat barren, and knock me over with a feather if you could figure out why they were fighting over it. Hans Island.
Okay, well, let me interrupt you for just a second.
Okay.
If you're in the chat room or if you're listening to us, and you have Google Earth, just take Google Earth and type in Hans Island.
That's H-A-N-S, Hans.
That's right, Hans Island. It's where I think our Prime Minister should go and be most useful.
Now, here's the thing is, if you just Google Hans Island, a week ago, you might have got the odd story about it, maybe.
Right.
But it's all over the news now. And people today are scratching their heads going, I never knew this was going on. And okay, but this has been going on for not just years, but for decades. And just to set it up for the people who have not been regular listeners of our show, just to explain what this was Hans Island, when Denmark, Greenland is Danish territory.
Yes, it is.
When Canada and Denmark settled on the maritime boundary between the two countries, between Baffin Island and Greenland, lo and behold, without anybody actually realizing it, they discovered that border, which is a water border, actually intersected, divided this small island between Baffin Island and Greenland called
it's about
Hans
2 square
Island.
miles.
So both Canada and Denmark laid claim to this island. So how was this war fought? Well, it was fought the way all wars should be fought, I think. Okay. All right. 1 year, and I don't actually know who fired the first shot, figuratively speaking, but whoever it was, let's assume it was Denmark. Okay. So along comes the Danish Navy. They land a landing crew, landing party on Hans Island, and they run up the Danish flag, and they leave behind a bottle of Danish liqueur, whatever it was.
Schnapps.
We'll call it schnapps. So, and that's the way it was until the following year, when the Canadian Navy landed a landing party, tore down the Danish flag, hoisted the maple leaf, and left behind a bottle of Canadian whiskey.
Canadian Club.
So
what else would you leave?
So now if you're not noticing a pattern yet, let me make this clear. The following year, the Danes land a landing party, tear down the Canadian flag. And okay, I want you to understand, our listeners have to understand that this went on for decades.
Oh yeah.
Year in, year out. And the only actual escalation, if you will, that the Danes were very kind to ignore was that a number of years ago, when, now I'm trying to remember who he was. I can picture him clearly in my mind. He was the Minister of Defense under the Liberal government, paid a visit to Hans Island during one of these landing parties.
Why does the name Lloyd Axworthy come to mind?
No, it wasn't Lloyd Axworthy. I'm not sure if Lloyd was ever defense minister. I should know this. I want to say it was David Anderson, and the Liberal David Anderson, because there was a conservative David Anderson as well.
Right.
But anyway, so he did make a visit, and that was a serious escalation. But the Danes decided, okay, we're going to de-escalate this conflict by not reciprocating. Anyway, this went on for a long time until finally both parties decided to say, you know, this is silly. This is a waste of good hooch. Okay, and we're losing a flag every year. So
the cost of the war just got too high.
The diplomats got together over the last couple of weeks, and they decided to do what I have to tell you, Nick, probably every sensible person in the world would have said they should do. They decided to honor the border that dissects the island.
Split the island in half.
So now we have the Canadian side of Hans Island, and we have the Danish side of Hans Island.
See, I knew there was a job for Trudeau up there. He could be the immigration minister.
Yeah, well, and
official there on Hans Island.
My guess, I stand to be corrected on this, but my guess is we're probably not going to see a lot of illegal border crossing up there.
Yeah, but you can't take that chance with those Danes, man. You got to have somebody up there checking on their passports when they come across.
Well, now that there's an official land border up there, given the behavior of both governments for the last number of decades, it wouldn't surprise me to learn that both of the countries are setting up some sort of a border crossing station.
It was Bill Graham, by the way.
Bill Graham, that's it. It was Bill Graham.
John just
good catch.
On the ball engineer producer put that up for us. So John,
thank you very much, John.
Thank you.
No, absolutely. Bill Graham. It was Bill. Graham, that's who it was. Yes.
Yeah. Actually, there was somebody I know quite well who wrote a parody song about that and played it on the radio. I wish I could find it because it was kind of cute. Anyway,
now let me just say one more thing about this topic, Nick, and that is this. This is really important to emphasize. Okay, none of this is made up. The way we've just described it is the way this conflict was fought year in and year out between the Danish Navy, the Royal Danish Navy, and the Canadian Navy. Of course, now finally back to the Royal Canadian Navy. So this is absolutely an accurate description of how the conflict was fought. It absolutely was Canada's longest undeclared war.
You're absolutely right. I mean, as much fun as we're having with this, and Woodenhead is absolutely right. This is the kind of war I would support because nobody gets hurt. You know, it's cost you a flag and a bottle of hooch every year,
And
plus the fuel to get there. But
it wasn't even enough. It wasn't even enough alcohol to get, more than one or two people drunk.
well, first one to the bottle, I guess. Anyway, we could leave them a case that might get half the Danish Navy loaded. If we send them up some good Canadian whiskey, send them up some Wisers or something like that.
Now, if this had been the American Navy, they wouldn't have been able to leave that bottle behind.
That's right.
Because they never would have been able to transport it because American Navy ships are all dry.
Yes, but there's the doctor on board carries alcohol in his thing. And after 60 days at sea, the crew members are allowed 2 beers a day, but they have to drink it in front of the doctor. So you could have put a bottle in his safe in his sick bay.
Sick bay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, in his sick bay.
That's right. And when they get
transport it, you mean? Oh, I thought you were asking.
To transport it. Oh God, no, they couldn't drink it. Not they would never serve hard liquor. That's why they would always come over to our ships when we pulled into places like Norfolk, West Virginia, the biggest naval base on the east coast of the United States. All the American sailors would come over to our ships and drink all our booze and drink our beer and go
on
home.
Board.
Oh, the stories I could tell. I just don't have time. But just think, big Texan, 12 cans of Keith's, and decides to show off how to crush a can against his forehead. And the cans weren't light aluminum, they were tin. And what do you think happened? He knocked himself out cold. But anyway, that's a different story for another day.
Another reason why the Americans never got involved in this.
Yeah, you know what? They said there's too much of a war for us. We can't handle that. You guys go at it. And I'll call this a victory for common sense. It's not something
ultimately, but unfortunately, now we have no more fighting. We have no more war. And here's the other thing. Okay, this was a friendly conflict between NATO allies, because don't forget Denmark is a member of NATO.
Well, now think about this, and I'm just being silly here, just because we're up against the clock and we got to take a break. But think about this. Canada and Denmark actually exchanged shots over Hans Island. An attack against one is an attack against all. So what does NATO do?
I have an answer to that, Nick. Okay. It all depends on what kind of shots you're talking about. Are you talking about, are you talking about bullets? Or are you talking about
little
shots?
1 ounce glasses?
Yeah. So
yeah, I suppose that would make it.
Yeah. We were definitely taking shots at one another.
Oh yeah. Now see, that's another way to solve the war. Just have the lower decks of each ship meet in the middle of Hans Island and lay out a bunch of hooch, and the last crew member from the lower deck standing wins the war.
Nick, I have to tell you, you and I are probably the only talk show in this country over the last few years that has regularly highlighted on our show the Hans Island conflict. And I think that if there's going to be some sort of an on-location signing ceremony, I think that the Canadian and Danish governments should get together and transport us there to be honorary witnesses to that treaty.
To Hans Island? No, they're not going to sign it on Hans Island, are they?
I think they should, with us there.
Let's do it in August. Let's do it in August. I don't want to go in January.
Absolutely.
July or August, okay.
August.
All right.
I'm up for it.
Now, we'll bring a dozen pens and a couple of bottles of hooch just to celebrate with.
I'm not bringing it. I expect... No. The Danes are going to supply our liquor.
And we're going to supply theirs?
Well, the Canadian Navy can do that.
That's what I mean when I said ours.
Yeah.
All right.
I just want to make sure I'm not bringing it with me.
You call the Canadian Defense Minister and you make that case, and you call Transport Command, Central Command down in Trenton, and get us on a Herc, because they fly a Herc almost up there anyway, up to Alert once a month. So I'll take that Herc ride.
Yeah, and then we have to find a vessel to pick us up and transport us.
That's Canadian Navy's role. They're supposed to get us from the shore over to Hansat, send a cormorant for us, or not a cormorant, but the what's the new one? Not the Sea King. What do they call them? The helicopter the Navy now uses. It's on the tip of my tongue.
Griffins?
No. Maybe it's a cormorant.
I don't remember.
It doesn't matter. Whatever helicopter they're using, send one for us.
Right. Just not a Sea King.
Well, we don't fly Sea Kings anymore. We finally retired them.
I know. But I could see for something as important as this, just for
they
the
might
sake
pull
of
one out of the
nostalgia,
museum.
I could see them pulling them out of retirement. One out of retirement. Well, they
Just
probably have to pull 5 or 6 out of retirement to get one flying.
Now, wouldn't that be awesome competition if we could arrange something like that, and then let our audience? We'll have a contest amongst the participants of the show to see who gets to go with us.
And we're taking John with us too, because we're going to need a producer.
Well, listen, you can't do a show without a producer. Just send the Stokers. Yeah, I like that idea.
All right. Anyway.
All right. I think we're a little over our break time.
A little bit.
Okay, so we'll take a break. I'm just going to run off the little boys' room. So if I'm not back in time, Joseph, you can bring us back. We'll be right back on the Nick and Joe Show right after this.
We all know that climate change is real. But with countries like China and India failing to do their part, what Canadians need now more than ever is a Made in Canada climate change plan. A real plan that responds to the real-world needs of Canadians. A balanced plan that supports responsible economic growth and strengthens our essential infrastructure. A responsible plan that protects our natural environment and ensures that all Canadians enjoy the blessings of clean air, clean land, and clean water for generations to come. It's time for Canadian politicians to show real leadership in the world, putting partisanship and ideology aside. It's time for a sensible climate plan. We're the International Climate Science Coalition Canada, and we're ready to help. To learn more, visit our website, icsc-canada.com.
There we are. I made it.
Nick's back.
He is. As a matter of fact,
perfect timing, Nick. Perfect timing.
I made him hurry. What can I tell you? Had just enough time for that. All right. going from the lightheartedness of the first half of the hour, I got to bring this up. In the House of Commons, we have, was it 4 parties? Well, 5, I think. There's the Bloc. There's the Green. Do we have a Green member? Is Elizabeth May still there?
No, she resigned. I don't know if there's actually a Green
I don't think
member
there's
at
a
the moment.
Green member, which is fine with me. I don't care. So there's the NDP, the Conservatives, and the Liberals. And the NDP entered into a coalition with the Liberals to keep the Liberals in power. And Jagmeet Singh is as responsible, maybe even more so, for this for the continuation of this most corrupt government. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And yet,
and Singh is the leader of the NDP.
And of the NDP, yes. For our American listeners, he's the head of our left-wing side of the house.
And our Danish visitors for tonight.
That's right. Hey, listen, I'm sure the Danish Defense Ministry heard every word of that. Anyway, but this gentleman decided to stand in the House of Commons and make what I think is one of the most hypocritical things I've ever heard. And that's saying something coming out of the Canadian government. So, John, if you've got that clip ready, we're going to play you a clip of what he had to say in the House of Commons. And then when it's done, we're going to talk about it. So, John, anytime you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 1 out of 4 Canadians will lose their home if interest rates continue to rise. 1 out of 4 Canadians are going hungry because they can't afford their groceries. And the Minister of Finance is going to give a speech tomorrow, which was supposed to respond to their needs, and instead is going to be a re-announcement of previous measures, none of which will help people right now. People need immediate support so they can make ends meet. Why does this Prime Minister continue to ignore the plight of people and refuse to deliver financial support directly to families who need it most?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I recommend that my honourable colleague, and indeed all colleagues in this House, take advantage of the opportunities coming up to speak with Canadians who've seen their childcare expenses cut in half in different parts of this country, as more parts of this country, like Ontario and others, do that in the coming weeks and months. That's because of federal investments made, yes, over the past many months, but are landing right now in people's bank accounts and pocketbooks. At the same time, in the coming weeks, we will be increasing the Canada Child Benefit alongside the cost of living. Those are concrete helps delivered now.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, I was falling asleep there.
Yeah, well, believe me. The point I want to make with that clip was he has a lot of gall to stand there and say that, considering without him, we would most likely, if he had joined with the Conservatives to defeat the last budget, we'd be in election cycle right now getting rid of this guy. And we could put in place real policies or get rid of policies and red tape and tax levels on things like carbon taxes that would make it easier for Canadians to get by. And just the gall of this guy, he's the one who made it possible. And now he's standing there, when will the government do something about it? Well, you had a chance to do something about it when you decided to form that coalition. If you hadn't done it, we wouldn't be, well, we might be in a mess, but we wouldn't be in this mess. And this is what drives me crazy about it. When I heard him say that, I just about lost my mind. Does he not understand that people, we're not stupid? We know who is really responsible. He has more responsibility for the way the economic outlook on this country is than the government does, because he is kingmaker. He's the one who kept them in power. He could have brought them down by joining with the Conservatives and setting the good of the country ahead of the good of his own party, but he chose not to. And that's how come he is a flaming world-class hypocrite. Not that I have a strong attitude about it.
Well, Nick, I wish that when we were together on this show, you'd have an opinion.
Yeah, I know. I'm so inert and benign and mild and look, but really, Joseph,
I have a couple of things. Okay, well, first of all, the point you're making, Nick, is absolutely right. It's really cynical and hypocritical of the leader of the New Democratic Party to stand up and criticize in the House of Commons the policies of the Liberal government that they themselves, by written agreement, are continuing to prop up. If you disagree as vehemently as your performance seemed to indicate with Liberal policies, why are you continuing to support this minority government? To me, it doesn't make any sense. And it clearly doesn't make sense to you, Nick. And I think that if you are talking to most common sense Canadians, they'll agree with you. It doesn't make sense to them either. But I can't let the occasion pass without making one or two comments about the Prime Minister's response. For starters,
yeah.
Okay. Well, for starters, let's not look. I'm not going to make light of inflation and the hardship of inflation and the worry that comes along with rising interest rates. Okay, not going to make light of any of that. Those are serious issues for people who are living on the edge. But I will say this, okay? I object very strongly, just before I talk about what the Prime Minister had to say, I object very strongly to the tactic of fear-mongering that the leader of the NDP is engaged in this clip. I don't believe that 1 in 4 Canadians are going to lose their homes if interest rates rise. It will make it more difficult. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. There are going to be Canadians who are going to lose their homes if interest rates continue to rise. But 1 in 4, that strikes me as being a little bit unjustified panicking or trying to foment panic in order to achieve a political result. And it's kind of like the COVID tactic of we still see in the House of Commons, everybody's wearing a mask in the House of Commons, except whoever happens to be speaking at that particular point in time. But I'm going, if the leader of the NDP or anyone else can stand up and speak openly without a mask in the House of Commons, then why would anyone have to wear a mask? To me, it doesn't make any sense, and it's just virtue signaling, and it's trying to foment some degree of fear and panic in the population in order to compel them to follow whatever the instructions are. So that's the first thing. But I want to go back to what the Prime Minister had to say, talking about childcare benefits, talking about other subsidies and other payments going out to families and to individuals, etc. And all of this comes back to, and you just touched on it, Nick, and I want to really emphasize this. The number one expense for everybody in this country is taxes. That's Absolutely. The number one thing. Now, you may not realize it, okay, because you pay your income tax and you pay your property taxes if you're a homeowner, and you pay your sales tax if you're in a province that has sales tax. Well, every province has sales tax because we have the federal sales tax. So you look at that stuff and you go, well, that's not most of my income going towards paying taxes. But what you don't realize is how much of your income, how much of what you spend is actually covering the taxes and the cost of government on private business that's built into the price of what you're buying, whether it's goods or services. So there have been a number of studies done on this, and we all know that the number one thing that the number one expense, whether it's hidden or not, for the average Canadian family is government. It's taxes. So here's the thing. If you really want to help Canadian consumers, if you want to help Canadian families, if you want to mitigate the penalty or the cost of high inflation, cut taxes. Cut taxes. Let people. I don't want the government to take money from me only to give it back to me, or to take money from you and decide to give it to me. I just want the government to let me keep what I earn. Now, I'm not anti-government. Like you, Nick, we understand we have a government. We have services that are necessary and maybe services that aren't necessary, but people want to pay for. But it just, it's out of control right now again. And this is something, if you want to tackle inflation and you want to help people, you have to get the growth and cost of government under control, and you have to cut taxes and let people keep their own earnings.
Look, this has been a battle cry of mine for years, and you and I are on exactly the same page. If you really want to help, that's why I went after the carbon tax, because look, let's assume for the sake of this discussion that the number's not 1 in 4. Let's say it's 1 in 8 or 1 in 10 families may lose their homes as interest rates rise. Because you're right, some people will. They're overextended in their mortgage, hoping that the rates stay low, and they've bought properties that are for far more money than they're actually worth, or that you can already see the market starting to cool. Now, will it go back to the way it was before this, let's say during the last 2 years over COVID? Probably not, but I don't think the prices are going to stay the way that they are. When you're buying and selling property, it's only like anything else. It's only worth what people are willing to pay. And I think the rush to get out of the city and buy a piece of property to live a more agrarian lifestyle, or get out of the city so that they're not trapped in a 2-bedroom apartment 15 floors off the concrete, with their wife and 2 children. They don't want to go through that again. So they've decided to move out of the city and find a little piece of land somewhere. Those days are coming to an end. There's not as many people out there doing that now. And, you're going to see a cooling in that marketplace. So as the interest rates begin to rise, the U.S. Federal Reserve just raised the interest rates by 75 points. And Canada is expected to follow suit. And they've already raised it half a point. So that's 1.5 points that they'll raise it. So let's say the interest rate was 1%. Now it's 2.5. Well, that doesn't sound like much, but if you've got yourself a $600,000 or $700,000 mortgage, and your payments are $1,500, $2,000 a month, I'm guessing at the numbers. I don't know if those are real or not, but just for the sake of discussion, all of a sudden now you're paying. You might have been on the line before. So some people are going to suffer some pretty nasty consequences. But the way to help with that isn't to necessarily control interest rates as it is to take the taxes off the very thing we absolutely must have as cheap as possible, and that's energy, because that's what drives the price up of everything. And until they do that, he can talk about handing out money from, this fund and that fund, because it all comes out of our pockets, and it doesn't mean anything. It's a great big washing machine, rinse, repeat, recycle. And just, you're taking money from your neighbor, give it to somebody else. And then by the time it gets there, governments, they got sticky fingers. So to put $1 into your pocket out of the federal coffers is probably going to cost us $2, $3 to do that. So you lose all the way around. There's no upside to this. So cut taxes. Let people keep what I would love to see, a federal flat tax. 15%. Anybody making more than $34,999 a year pays 15% on every dollar above that. So if you make 35 grand, guess what? You owe them $1, or you owe them 15 cents, and go up the scale like that. So you don't have a progressive tax rate in the sense that, every time you go up in income, they increase the percentage. Keep your percentage the same and let people earn as much as they want. And the government would make many more times in revenue that way than they would by punishing financial success. And this kind of mindset, when I hear people, I think we should pay taxes because I like roads. Well, so do I. But I think we've long passed that mark. I don't think we need to pay 50% of our income to pave the roads and make sure the police have enough gas to put in their tank to respond when somebody's breaking through my window at 3:00 in the morning.
Yeah, all good points, Nick. All good points. Another thing to bear in mind, and we're talking about cutting taxes. I think that's a critically important thing to do. But given the inflationary period that we seem to be in, one of the very key things that government should be doing right now also is is really getting spending under control, and in fact trying to find ways to reduce spending now. Because here's the thing about inflation: as interest rates go up, okay, remember we've become very spoiled in countries like Canada, and we're not the only country that in that we've borrowed a lot of money, and even without deficits, okay, when you talk about borrowing money, so you have a balanced operational budget, but maybe you've borrowed money and you're for capital expenditures, etc. So what they do is they build into the budget, they build into that budget payments on existing debt, on that kind of borrowing. So when we talk about the national debt, we're really talking about the accumulated deficit. Okay. So, but let's not, maybe I don't want to really go down that rabbit hole too much. But the point I'm making here is that we've become very spoiled by borrowing at very low interest rates. And by the way, Kirk is mentioning about $100 in a Chevy Cobalt. Man, welcome to the club. My wife and I drive a Chevy Cobalt as well. $100 for a fill-up if it's empty. I mean, that's, you buy a Chevy Cobalt. I don't even think they're available anymore. Ours is like 14 years old, if you can believe that. I mean, we've taken good care of it. Anyway, yeah, it's look, you have to understand that with rising interest rates, all the governments that have taken on a lot of debt are going to start to see some of that debt spiraling on the verge of getting out of control.
Well,
so
here's the other thing to remember.
It's a very serious problem.
Here's the other thing to remember about interest rates. It's not only homeowners and people who have extended lines of credit and things like that who have borrowed money. The government too. Every time it goes up a point, it costs us hundreds of millions of dollars to service the debt.
Right.
That's why having over a $1 trillion debt is so painful. People they look at the deficit, right, and think, oh, well, we're close to a neutral deficit, or maybe we've got a bit of a surplus. Yeah, okay, but the point is, you still have a massive debt. That's like saying I paid off my credit cards this month, but I got a $400,000 mortgage. I mean, you're ignoring the mortgage for the sake of the credit card, even though it's just people don't understand there's two sides to the coin. There's deficit, which is your monthly budget or your yearly budget. And if you exceed it, that goes into the debt. And that's the way the country works. If you have a surplus, well, you should put the surplus against the debt or split it. But in the days when we used to have surpluses, I would always say, take half the surplus, put it against the national debt, and take the other half and give it back to the taxpayer in proportion to which they paid taxes.
Right.
So those who pay the most get the biggest return.
So there are two problems that you're highlighting. The first is, of course, the deficit, and everybody understands that's a problem. What people tend not to understand is that the surplus is a problem too. Surplus is another word for overtaxation.
Yes, it is.
And of course, you want to have a surplus, and we need to have a surplus in order to pay down our debt. But I got to tell you, Nick, I'm a big fan of what I like to call the Ben Franklin principle, or the Ben Franklin method of public financing. And when I talk about Ben Franklin, I'm not talking about the Benjamin Franklin that everybody thinks about down in the United States. Okay, one of the fathers of the
founding fathers of the United States.
One of the founding fathers of the United States.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the former mayor of the city of Nepean, which used to be a separate city as a suburb to the city of Ottawa. It's now part of Ottawa itself. But when Ben Franklin became the mayor of the city of Nepean, the city of Nepean had a significant amount of debt. And Ben Franklin, along with some allies on council, decided that he didn't think that this was the appropriate way to do public financing. So he instituted a policy of pay as you go.
Right.
Pay as you go, meaning what we would do in the city of Nepean is we would decide what we wanted, if we wanted to build a library, or if you wanted to build an arena, or if you wanted to build a new road, or whatever, that they would figure out what the cost of that project would be. And then they would establish a reserve fund. And that every year, what we would do is we put a little bit of of money aside in that reserve fund, so that after however many years, whatever the plan was,
right,
when it came time to actually doing the capital project, we actually had the money to pay for it in cash, and we never had to borrow. So it took a period of time of doing that, plus paying off the existing debt, but after a while, we in the city of Nepean were debt free, and in the end, okay, it's tough when you're transitioning, but in the final analysis, the truth is that as a matter of policy, it not only does it cost the same, okay, to do it that way in the long term once you're doing pay as you go, right? But it actually costs less, because instead of borrowing the money and paying the interest on it, you're actually putting the money aside in a reserve fund and collecting interest. So in fact, it saves money in that sense. So, if I was running for federal office or provincial office, this is something I would say. I'd say, we should be really thinking about whether or not we can arrange our public finances in line with what I call, again, the Ben Franklin method of public finance, and that is pay as you go. All right? It's a very doable thing. It's not easy. It takes discipline, but once you've achieved it, it's the greatest thing. And when we had amalgamation here in Ottawa, the city of Ottawa, which was heavily indebted at the time, ended up getting all of our reserve funds, because we had a lot of money in the bank in the city of Nepean. And of course, all of that's gone now. And all of us who live in the former city of Nepean now find ourselves, indebted as citizens of the city of Ottawa. Now, I'm not trying to knock the city of Ottawa, but I'm just saying it just goes to show a very different philosophy. And I bring this up only because, Nick, I think it's a very doable thing at all levels of government, very prudent. And then you never have the situation where inflation is going to screw up your budget. In fact, if you want to be really cynical, inflation and higher interest rates would actually be, in a sense, a positive thing in a situation like this, because you're going to generate more interest with your reserve funds. Now, just a caveat, of course, when I'm saying that, I understand that higher interest rates usually come from inflation, which means that the cost of things that you're purchasing is going to climb as well. So maybe in the end it comes out in the wash. But I think it's a very real, doable thing. And I wish more governments would follow that example.
The other attitude I wish they would adopt, you're familiar with who Ray Kroc, I think he's passed on now, but was, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's the guy who put McDonald's on the map. And he had an attitude about income and about profit, and about, you apply the same logic to taxes. And he would often ask, when asked about, how to run a business, he said, look, when it comes to how to make money, ask yourself this question: would you rather have the profit of 100% of one hamburger or 1% of a million? Which one makes you more money? So to go back to taxes, if you lowered the tax rate to, I'm just picking that number, 15% out of the air, that leaves a lot more money in the economy to tax, and you would make a lot more money at the 15% than you do at the higher rates that we're charging now. Because people tend to, if the tax rates are reasonable, people won't bother to try to hide their income because they know they're going to keep most of it. You won't need tax shelters. You won't have offshore accounts. You won't have people squirreling away their money so the government can't get at it because they've worked hard to get it. And contrary to popular belief, not everybody who has a dollar more than you do is an evil, wicked man and had to stab people in the back and climb up the corporate ladder, screwing everybody on the way up. That's not how it works. And most people who are wealthy, and I've run into a number of them over my lifetime, work very hard and have risked everything to get to where they're at and deserve what they've earned. So to punish them for that is just, to me, is absolutely asinine that we do that.
Okay, and just before we go for a break, I just want to respond to Mark, who made a comment about the problem with politicians is they're only interested in their legacy. I agree that that's an issue, but I would argue, Mark, that leaving your finances in a particularly sound order is actually
It's a
a
great
pretty good legacy for a politician. So, if I was the prime minister or if I was the mayor of a city, that's the kind of legacy that I would be pursuing. I got to tell you, because I think leaving something in the coffer for the next generation, I think is exactly the right thing to do.
All right. With that, we're going to take our top of the hour break. So if you want to rush off and grab your favorite beverage and come on back and join us again, we certainly would appreciate that. We'll take a break right now. So, John, that's your cue. We'll be right back with more on the Nick and Joe Show.
We all know that climate change is real. But with countries like China and India failing to do their part, what Canadians need now more than ever is a Made in Canada climate change plan. A real plan that responds to the real-world needs of Canadians. A balanced plan that supports responsible economic growth and strengthens our essential infrastructure. A responsible plan that protects our natural environment and ensures that all Canadians enjoy the blessings of clean air, clean land, and clean water for generations to come. It's time for Canadian politicians to show real leadership in the world, putting partisanship and ideology aside. It's time for a sensible climate plan. We're the International Climate Science Coalition Canada, and we're ready to help. To learn more, visit our website, icsc-canada.com.
All right. I hope you had a chance to fill up your beverage container, or whatever it is that you enjoy, and are with us for the second hour. We've got plenty more ahead. I thought we'd move on to another topic, and I saw a meme. I saw a meme the other day on Facebook, and it's all about the monkeypox. So that's what this topic is. But it says, "Don't worry about me. I don't need a shot for the monkeypox. I'm wearing the patch." And somebody had taken a Chiquita banana sticker and put it on their forearm, and I thought it was just hilarious. So, excuse me, the World Health Organization, in its wisdom and in its all-knowing, all-seeing, all-wise attitude, if I can find the story, here it is, find the story, has decided they want to rename monkeypox because it's racist. Let me share with you just a couple of sentences. Excuse me. The World Health Organization will be changing the name of monkeypox over concerns of racism and stigma that surrounded the virus that has infected over 1,600 people across over 20 countries. So stop and think about this. Again, this is another one of these cases about the threat being nothing compared, statistically insignificant, I guess it's a better way to say it. And 1,600 people over 20 countries. Now, monkeypox is not a nice disease, okay? It's not. Nobody wants to get monkeypox. I won't bother to tell you how to get it. You can Google it and figure it out yourself. The WHO director, Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, I can't even say his name, on Tuesday said it's working with partners and experts from around the world on changing the name of the monkeypox virus, its clades, and the disease it causes. A new name, they say, will be released as soon as possible. Okay, first of all, who but a racist would think the name monkeypox is racist? I don't understand this. Like, why would you even bring race into it? It's about monkeys. It's got nothing to. You realize, because in the article, when you read further, they're talking about, they don't want to stigmatize Africans. I got news for you. There's monkeys in more places than just Africa. The Rock of Gibraltar's crawling with them. Japan has all kinds of monkeys. They're not indigenous to just the African continent. They're monkeys from basically all over the world. So what is this about stigmatizing Africans? I mean, Joseph, I'm running out of words to kind of describe the tomfoolery of this stuff. And it's another reason why groups like the United Nations, the World Health Organization, people like that need to be ignored. Because, first of all they'll do by trying to rename the monkeypox is ingrain that name in people's minds. Only the woke crowd will say, "Oh, you can't call it that. You might offend somebody." I don't care. If somebody gets offended at the name monkeypox, well, I'll throw them a banana. Tough. I mean, I'm just sick and tired of worrying about everybody's feelings, because I don't go around trying to offend people, not on purpose. But if they take offense at something like monkeypox, then the problem's theirs, not mine. And it's just, where does this stuff come from? I mean, you couldn't write a Hollywood script like this.
Well, you could. It would be along the lines of, Young Frankenstein or Blazing Saddles, in that kind of category
from that
of
sense,
movie.
okay,
I think,
I get
right?
it. Yes,
but look, yeah, I don't get it. I can't imagine why anybody would have thought that the term monkeypox was potentially racist or was provoking some sort of, or promoting some sort of racism. I mean, with that logic, how do you react to smallpox? Do you say we have to change the name smallpox to something else because we're afraid of offending little people? Or how about chicken pox?
Well, what about
I don't know
German measles?
I don't know where chickens come from originally, but we got a lot of chickens in
eggs.
Ontario, so I don't want to offend Ontario people. But
They
but on the other hand, when you follow this logic, is really what it is it's really a competition in virtue signaling, and of course they have nothing to virtue signal on, so they have to invent a problem. And so they've invented this problem now, and of course I'm thinking to myself, what does this have to do with the World Health Organization in the first place? You know what? How about just sticking to your mandate, which is World Health? Okay, so I don't think that monkeypox is that big a deal in the first place.
No.
It's certainly it's okay. We're not going to get into that, but
that's the same attitude.
That's a rabbit hole that we'll never climb out of tonight.
We'll let other shows do that.
Yeah. Okay. So, but I don't think it's that big a deal. Okay. But and clearly it's not that big a deal if this is what the World Health Organization is going to spend its time on, is the whether or not we're offending people. Anyway, I don't get it. I really don't. Let's stop calling it German measles because we don't want to offend Germans. I don't even know if the measles originated in German or if there's such a strain as German measles.
Well, the Spanish flu originated in the States.
The Spanish flu originated in the United States. Okay.
So and we don't worry about offending the Spaniards.
But here's the funny thing. Okay. We as Canadians, I think, are a little jealous because we haven't had a disease named after Canada.
That's not necessarily
Okay, so
true.
here we go. Tell us, Nick.
There is a disease, a sickness named after a national animal. It's called beaver fever. Now, we haven't had a case of it. Like, I've just moved out of Renfrew County, and in Renfrew County, there hasn't been a case of beaver fever in 100 years.
Yeah,
But
sorry. Let me just interrupt for a second.
Sure.
Okay, I see Craig is referring to Oprah Winfrey and her clan.
Yeah.
Okay, please, Craig, be careful how you're referring to Oprah Winfrey. Okay, clan is clearly a Scottish word, and we don't want to offend either Oprah or any from a Scottish heritage. So, okay, we just want to make sure that we're on.
Yeah, on safe
I'm
ground.
not reacting to that one. I'm not reacting to that comment.
Okay. But no, really, this beaver fever, it comes from drinking water because beavers spend most of their life in water. And when they have to go to the bathroom, they don't care where they go. So it's from the fecal matter of beavers that you get beaver fever. But there hasn't been a case of it because most people are smart enough not to drink out of streams as pure as they might look. Running through the forest and all that stuff, because not only is there beavers, but there's Bambi and every other furry thing.
Absolutely.
You know, it all ends up in that water. So you can drink the water, but you have to boil it first or put a little chlorine in it to kill off the bacteria. Other than that. To make my point, though, there is a disease, an illness that's named after, maybe not Canada. Like, you don't have Canadian maple syrup overdose syndrome.
Well, we don't have the Canada flu.
Yeah, we don't have the Canada flu. And I'm okay with that. I don't care.
Of course, I think the Prime Minister just came back to Canada with,
COVID virus. We'll get to that in the next segment.
75 or something like that. So I don't know. Maybe we could call that the Canada variant. And of course,
it induces loss of common sense
and
the ability to think rationally.
I feel like I've reached the big time in the world because of this. Now, here's a question, Nick. What about yellow fever? Should we rename yellow fever?
I know what you're alluding to.
Fever?
Yeah. So are we worried about the feelings of colors now? What about the Black Plague?
Well, I have to. Okay, I would be a little concerned that somebody might misinterpret the term yellow fever to be an indication that when I'm referring to yellow fever, that I'm somehow suggesting that fever originated with people from the Far East.
That's what I meant when I said I think I know where you're going with that. But you know what? I would just, anybody who would make that claim, I say, look, I don't worry about the feelings of colors. I'm not going to rename the Black Plague.
I don't care about the feeling of monkeys.
Fair enough.
Okay.
And there's some people I don't care about their feelings either.
I don't know what to say about this stuff, Nick. It is so, I was speaking with somebody this afternoon, and we were talking about politics and we were talking with the truckers, incidentally.
Right.
And the truck demonstration here in the wintertime here in Canada and in Ottawa. And I was explaining, I said, the way that these guys were described in the mainstream media and by the Prime Minister and his entourage, that it was as though we're living in a parallel universe, because it was just so completely the opposite of the way it really was. And so when I think about the World Health Organization taking issue with the term monkeypox, because for whatever reason, I'm thinking, why not yellow fever? Why not German measles? Why not Spanish flu? So the point I'm making here, Nick, is the whole thing is crazy.
Yeah,
the whole thing is crazy, and it's as though we're living in a parallel universe. There are some of us that are still living in the real world, and the rest of these people are off living in some sort of fantasy world.
I think they've been watching. You remember the Bugs Bunny Looney Tunes character Marvin the Martian?
Was his name Marvin?
I think so.
I remember the Martian.
Yeah, I think that's where they've been living.
But you know, the Martian in Looney Tunes was not a very nice character.
No, I know.
I mean, they made fun of him and everything, and all I could say is that is very anti-Martian.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, he wanted to destroy the world. He used to wear a little Roman helmet, and he was just a little black ball with two eyes and two little stick legs, right?
Yeah, and which brings me to a related topic, and that is that you can't even get most of those Bugs Bunny Looney Tune cartoons anymore on television.
No, you can get them on YouTube, but you can't get them on TV because they're too violent.
You can get them on YouTube for now. For now, you can.
Yeah.
But at some point in time, people are going to start taking those down.
Yeah, I know. And it's too bad, too, because they were great.
Elmer Fudd, Elmer Fudd makes fun of bald people with a lisp.
Elmer Fudd. Speaking of Elmer Fudd, when the Prime Minister announced this new gun restriction on sidearms, it occurred to me, Elmer Fudd, somebody had made a comment about Elmer Fudd, and I said, it's not going to make any difference to Elmer Fudd because he could never hit the broadside of a barn anyway. You were safer running away. If you stood still, you were safer than trying to run because he couldn't hit you. He went through thousands of rounds of ammunition and never even put a hole in Bug's ear. And just like the whole thing was just plain crazy. And I know we're a little off track here, but this whole handgun ban, isn't going to change a thing. It's still, because ultimately it's the same old worn out saw. Bad guys don't care about gun laws. They will smuggle weapons in. As a matter of fact, there was a case where a drone was found to be smuggling firearms over the border from Mexico to the United States.
That's where they come from. For the most part, they come from over the border.
Right. It's not people like you and I who happen to have a 22 caliber target pistol, or any other pistol, who take it in a locked box to the range after telling the police we're going. I mean, how much more restrictive do you want? They've been basically banned in this country since the 1930s. And this is just more of that virtue signaling. And I think even a little more darkly, it's a method of disarming the population, because they are afraid that if they push people too far, I'm not suggesting it will be an armed insurrection, but that's what they're afraid of. And because I don't think Canadians, if there was ever going to be an armed insurrection in this country, it would have been in January with the truckers protest. But that's not the way that went down at all.
Don't even hint at it. Look, I've become convinced that it's not even virtue signaling. Virtue signaling, it implies that there's a purpose to it, and the purpose is to virtue signal. Okay, I think these guys really believe it. I think they really believe it. I think they go, gun violence in the United States. We better we better pass a law against handguns in Canada. I don't think they have the slightest clue about what kind of gun control we already have here. I mean, we have gun control. And say people say, "Well, are you against gun control?" No, we've had gun control for decades in this country, so if somebody shoots somebody in the United States, I mean, it's just to me, this whole thing is crazy, and I really have come to the point where I'm believing that these guys really believe in what they're doing. They really believe in it. And I don't know how you could believe in a handgun ban, that banning handguns that are already banned for all intents and purposes. And I don't understand how people could believe that some further tightening of existing handgun bans in Canada are going to stop the criminals from smuggling weapons into Canada from the United States. but they honestly believe it, Nick. That's the problem. The problem is that we're dealing with people who are living in essentially an alternate existence.
Yeah.
And in that existence, there's no connection to reality. It's all about whatever thought comes to your mind at first, and that's all that matters. And if it sounds good, then it must be good, and it doesn't matter. Facts be damned.
Well, it's funny because this is the same kind of mentality as Joe Biden demonstrates in the States, saying that the Americans are in better financial shape than they've ever been. He's so disconnected from reality. I mean, just gas prices through the roof. They've got problems with the southern border. They've got all kinds of problems down there. And yet he stands there and says, no, we're doing fine. Okay, well, he's going to get slaughtered at the next election if he lasts that long, if they don't push him out between now and then. But at the same time, you translate that mentality north of the border, and this is what is produced. You see, a horrible situation in Vallejo or whatever it was, Texas, that school down there, a horrible situation. Nobody is saying it's anything less than that. But based on that one incident, he's going to ban people's right to own private property. Regulating inanimate objects makes about as much sense as telling a plow not to plow too deeply into the ground.
Right.
I'm sorry, it's not up to the plow.
So, I have a solution to school shootings in the United States. And if you want to know how to if you want to know how to prevent school shootings anywhere in the world, go to Israel and see what they do at their schools in Israel. Or forget about Israel. Go to New York City and see what Jewish schools do in New York City or in any other big Jewish population area. You can't get on the property. Okay, the property is fenced off, proper fencing that you can't just climb over or take a cutter and cut. And to get into the property, you have to show your ID or whatever. You have to have business, and if you have no business, you're not getting on. And in Israel, okay, you walk up to a school property and pull out a gun, and the security guard that's there is going to shoot you down, and rightly so. And ask questions later.
Aren't the teachers armed as well?
No, they don't have to be, because nobody who has a gun is going to get into that school. And so if you really, really are concerned about school safety in the United States, okay, have a guard, have restricted access, and have your school that way.
But you will
never have a school shooting. More importantly, you will never have a school massacre, whether it's done with guns or not done with guns. Okay, we've had for a while, the big thing in Israel was stabbings. So people were going, well, we can't shoot and do a terrorist attack with a gun. It's getting harder and harder. So we're going to do stabbings. So you get these guys go crazy running down the street and stabbing 5 or 6 or 7 people before somebody shoots them down, okay, or stops them. Now, it doesn't happen that often, but it's the point I'm making is, if you don't ever have guns, if somebody wants to get into a school and massacre children, they could do that with knives as well. In fact, recall, Nick, we made fun of this some time ago, that the mayor of London, that knife violence was becoming so much of a problem that the mayor of London, England, was calling for knife control. And he wanted knives confiscated. That was the problem in England. People were running around with guns. You don't have that much gun violence in England for whatever reason. Okay?
Well, some guy from Scotland got arrested because he was carrying a potato peeler. And that violated the knife prohibition.
So and how often have we read in Muncie, New York? I think about a year ago or maybe 2 years ago, some guy with a machete breaking into a house and attacking people in the house with a machete, not a gun. So the
If
point
people
I'm
want to
making
do
here is
violence, they'll use whatever's at hand.
right, and guns. The truth is, guns can be very convenient if this is the kind of thing you want to wreak havoc. Guns is the quote unquote the weapon of choice. I hate to use that term, but I'm saying that there is a solution. The problem here is that you want to use gun violence in the United States as a justification for eliminating guns. Now, you can agree with that, you can disagree with it, but from my perspective, I don't care who owns a gun or doesn't own a gun. I care about the safety of children in schools. And if that's your number one issue, then how about implementing policies that are going to protect the children in schools, irrespective of whether or not an intruder is carrying a gun or any other kind of weapon?
Yeah, it all comes down to common sense, doesn't it? I mean, if you have a threat, and look, there's a deeper issue here, and there's another topic I want to talk about after the break, but it kind of dovetails together. And the issue is we have a problem with people thinking it's okay, speaking about guns, to use guns to solve what they perceive as problems. We didn't always have that problem, but I think it's because we have lost the sense of sacredness of human life. That the fact that a lot of people believe that people are just a higher form of animal, that we're no different than the beasts of the wilderness. And yes, we are mammals. There's no doubt about it. And we are, but there's a difference between the animal kingdom and the kingdom of man. And what you have is one of the biggest differences in my mind is people have the ability to think in the abstract. They have the ability to understand concepts that are not, directly before their eyes. They can think about things like you can get a horse to learn to kneel go down on one knee in front of a flag on a pole. But to the horse, it's a trick. It doesn't understand what the flag means. Human beings walking by that flag can look at it and be inspired or, have a whole range of emotions come out of that flag. Like if you have the Canadian flag on one pole and the Nazi flag on another, you get two totally different responses. Okay, because people understand abstraction. Animals don't. But we've lost that sense. And that too many people now think it's okay to solve problems by simply killing those who they perceive as causing them a problem instead of working those problems out like we used to. That's the heart of the problem. And until we fix that, you're going to continue to have gun violence.
Yeah. And I think you're touching on an important and bigger topic. And that is, okay, it's very nice to say, gun violence, eliminate guns, but there are fewer guns out there than there were 25 years ago or 30 years ago. And so because there's more gun control than there was 30 years ago. And yet there seems to be more gun violence. So what does that say? That to me says that there's a problem in society that gun violence is a symptom of, and that, you could take away all of the guns, but you're not really treating the problem that is plaguing society. Now, I don't pretend to have deep insight into what those problems are, but I think I can guess at some of the origins of some of the problems that are out there. And I look at, you've mentioned the loss of a sense of the sanctity of life. I think that's a big problem. I think another big problem is just simply the lack of self-discipline, that people don't seem to be anymore as disciplined and as self-accountable as they used to be. And I just look at the breakdown of the family and the consequent breakdown of society in many ways. So there are a lot of kids out there that are being raised without fathers, and I think that that's a terrible thing.
I do too.
And so we could point to a lot of different things, and we could do a whole show on this subject alone. I don't know what the solution is, and I frankly I'm not entirely convinced that I know what all of the problems are. But what I do know, is that the gun violence is not going to be resolved. I should say violence, indiscriminate violence, is not going to be solved by eliminating guns.
Well, remember this, Joseph, because we have to take a break. So let's end this segment with this. When Cain killed Abel, he didn't need a pistol.
Yeah, he didn't.
There you go.
And we can do a whole list of horrific crimes that have been committed,
yep.
But they don't get the kind of attention because people are not interested. The media isn't interested in somebody getting onto a bus here in Canada and with a machete and beheading people on the bus.
Yeah, that happened.
Remember that?
That was years ago. That fella out there taking a bus out in Alberta, I think it was. He took the head off a passenger, and he's out now, by the way.
Because it was a mental illness thing.
Yeah.
So ask yourself, why was he being treated? He should be in an
institution, not walking the streets.
Anyway.
All right. With that
break
said,
time.
You got it. It's break time. So, John, that's your cue. We'll be right back with more on the Nick and Joe Show right after this.
We all know that climate change is real. But with countries like China and India failing to do their part, what Canadians need now more than ever is a Made in Canada climate change plan. A real plan that responds to the real-world needs of Canadians. A balanced plan that supports responsible economic growth and strengthens our essential infrastructure. A responsible plan that protects our natural environment and ensures that all Canadians enjoy the blessings of clean air, clean land, and clean water for generations to come. It's time for Canadian politicians to show real leadership in the world, putting partisanship and ideology aside. It's time for a sensible climate plan. We're the International Climate Science Coalition Canada, and we're ready to help. To learn more, visit our website, icsc-canada.com.
All right, welcome back to the Nick and Joe Show, everybody. For those of you who are still following the Stanley Cup Finals, Colorado is beating Tampa Bay Lightning 3-1 at 12 minutes into the second period.
What game?
This is the first game of the finals tonight. So I'll be watching the last of it. That's for sure.
See, I got rid of the blurred background during the break.
Yeah, you did. How'd you do that?
It's a secret, Nick.
Okay. Well, I don't want to get killed, so don't tell me.
Listen, before we get on to the next topic, I just want to say something about the Chevy Cobalt. Kirk was mentioning about his rocker panels.
Yeah.
And Kirk, I just want to point out to you, we had exactly the same problem, rusted out rocker panels, and some other rust problems with the car. And so we thought to ourselves, okay, do we want to buy a new car? Because this one was already getting old. But that time it was, 11 or 12 years old. Or do we want to just spend the money on getting doing some body work? So we ended up spending a few $1,000s. We got the rocker panels replaced and some other body work done. And it looked like new, until something happened with a front end loader somewhere. We're not going to get into that, Nick.
Don't know what you're talking about.
You don't know. No, Nick doesn't know what we're talking about at all. Anyway, so it still almost looks like new, but that was a couple of years ago. and the only thing that we've actually had to do with the engine is this past winter, I had to get a new starter put in. That was it, a new starter and a new battery. But the car is 14 years old, so I have to tell you, and we don't intend to get rid of it. It's the body's in good shape now. It's driving nicely. I mean, it drives like a 14-year-old car. Doesn't drive like a brand new car. The engine doesn't run like it's brand new, but it's still running pretty good. And we take it back and forth to different cities and that we travel with it. For a longer trip, we might now start renting a vehicle for longer driving trips. But we're happy with it. So anyway, I just mentioned because I saw the comment that Kirk made about the rocker panels in his in his car. So yeah, we knew all about the rocker panels. It's funny you mentioned it because we had exactly the same problem.
I have driven Hondas for years. We still have a 2012 Honda Fit. It still gets 50 miles to the gallon. It's a little 5-speed. And I tell you what, I mean, every manufacturer has its fans, and for a wide variety of reasons. And I'm not raining on anybody else's choices, but I've never been let down by any of my Hondas. I love them, and I would take another one tomorrow. They're well built. I haven't had any body issues. The little Fit hasn't given me a moment's trouble. The only thing is the air conditioner doesn't work, but we're not going to spend $1,300 to have it fixed. Other than that, it runs like a charm. I should change the spark plugs in it, but to do that, spark plugs are $25 a piece, and it's going to cost about $200 to do it. Doesn't run that badly yet, so I'll leave it for now. Maybe change them in the fall. I don't know, but when you get a good car like that, regardless of what make it is, you just hang on to it because you get to a point where it doesn't owe you anything. And to get into cars are a terrible investment. If you're changing them every 3 or 4 years, then because you're just now getting to the point where the car is actually worth, what you get for it. But you're going to pay for that car 1.5 or 2 times between the day you buy it and the day you pay it off. Well, this month we pay off the last payment on that little Fit. So I'm going to drive it into the ground. We'll keep it. And if I get another 4 or 5 years out of it, that's 4 or 5 years of car payments I don't have to make. So I'm with you as far as hanging on to things that don't let you down. And I've got a pickup truck now, so I can use that. And I like my truck. It's not a GM, it's a Chrysler, but at least it's not a Ford. Wouldn't touch a Ford. I don't like Fords. So, but and talk about expense. You want to talk about expensive to fill? It's well over $200 now to fill that truck.
So let me just, before we move on to the final topic here in the home stretch, Nick, let me just emphasize something that you said that I think is worth repeating. Buying a new car is never a good investment.
No.
Because the minute you drive it off the lot, you've already devalued it by 30%. Whatever it is, 20, 25, 30%.
Yep.
So, if you drive it off the lot and have an accident, you'll never recover the cost of that car through your insurance because the value of the car is significantly lower once you've driven it off the lot. So, we did buy a new car once, but after that, we went back to just used cars. So that's my recommendation, and go to a place like Budget or any of those places and car rental companies and buy a low mileage rental car that they sell them regularly, or whatever, and just take care of it. And that's what we've done.
You can't get a manual that way.
Our Cobalt, we've had it now. It's a 14-year-old car, and we bought it secondhand. So anyway, just an interesting topic in and of itself.
Yeah, it is. And by the way, Chrissy, thank you for that because you want us to talk about some good hockey. The OHL Hamilton Bulldogs are up 3-0 over the Windsor Spitfires, and it's Game 7 of their finals. So that's something to go see. Just one tier down from the NHL. You're watching tomorrow's Stars, and it's worth going to it. I just found out that Sioux Lookout has an East Coast Hockey League team in it. I didn't know that. The Sioux Lookout Bombers. and they've got some people in there who stand a chance of making the NHL. You don't get a lot of people coming from the EHL into the NHL, but it's happened before. So these kids are pretty good hockey players. So go out and support your local hockey team. That's, I guess, is what I'm driving at. Because let's face it, you and I are not going to go to Colorado to watch the Stanley Cup Finals unless we win some kind of a prize, like the lotto or some kind of a draw somewhere. But just to spend the $1,500 a seat, never mind airfare and accommodations, to get into the rink,
right?
And most people.
And let's be honest. Also, you and I are never going to go to Toronto to see a Stanley Cup final game.
No, but you know where I will go? Winnipeg.
Okay. Well, I was. You missed my point, I think.
No, I got your point. Can't afford.
But you just ignored it.
Yes, in a nutshell. But I can go to Winnipeg and watch the Jets play the Leafs, or watch the Leafs play the Jets.
Yeah.
So
that's what 2 hour, 3 hour drive to Winnipeg from you?
4 from here.
Oh, 4. That's not bad. 4 is
make it a weekend. That's all.
Yeah,
I would do that in a heartbeat. And if we'd been here sooner,
next time I'm in Winnipeg for business, I'll give you a heads up, and you'll drive down, and we'll have dinner together or something.
Yeah, we'll go see a game.
Well, I don't know about that, but
well, come on, man. Anyway, it'd be fun to get together with you just for that alone. Anyway, the next topic I want to get into was the dropping of the mandates for internal travel for the non-vaccinated in Canada.
Right.
This had to come sooner or later. They did it very begrudgingly, and I think the timing is rather interesting. Trudeau gets COVID for the second time, and he's been double boosted and vaxxed and waxed and hair pulled and all that stuff multiple times now, and he still gets COVID. And he says, the reason I got it, I'm vaccinated and I got it, but you need to get vaccinated to keep us all safe. Well, wait a minute. If you got, double vaxxed and boosted and you still got it, why should I go out and get the vaccine? You're proving to me why it's not necessary. You're showing to me that the vaccine, it didn't help you because you still got it. And not once, but twice. So why would I go and do that? But John, if you want to get that clip ready and let me know, we have a clip of the transportation minister, whose name I cannot pronounce. No disrespect intended. I just don't want to butcher the man's name. Announcing the ending of the mandate. So, John, if you want to go ahead and roll that, please do.
That's why today's announcement is possible. And I'm pleased to announce that on June 20th, our government will suspend the requirement to be vaccinated in order to board a plane or train in Canada. Le 20 juin, notre gouvernement.
Okay, John, that's enough. We don't need to hear him talk. Say it again in French.
Well, we don't need to hear him try to say it in French.
Fair enough. His French sounds better than mine, though. But
okay, no, like the 20 juin. Okay, is not the 20th of June. It's the wind of June.
Okay, so not only can he not talk French, he can't count in French either.
Well, I know what he was trying to do, and I'm making fun of him, but what sometimes you don't realize is that when you butcher the accent that badly, you're actually using real words and putting together the sentences, and the sentence makes no sense, right? So what he said there, he was saying the 20th of June, but he couldn't say 20, so he had to say, he said 20, and I'm going, well, the 20 de juin is not the 20th of June, it's the wind of June. So,
see, but this is where I would have had somebody come out and repeat it in French or use a translator or something. Don't try, if you can't do it, don't butcher it, right? I think that's, I mean, I know people give you credit for trying, but when it's clear you can't do it, just don't.
Well, there's a time and a place, okay? And when you're making a major
announcement, you don't want to be misunderstood.
Announcement on the back. Yeah, I don't think. Anyway, I'm nitpicking.
Do that as it may. But I think this has been building for a long time. Everybody from airline to tourist associations and all that stuff have been crying for the dropping of these mandates. We're one of the last countries in the world to actually get rid of them. Much of Europe has been free of this. The United States is pretty much free of this. So now people who are not vaccinated can get back on an airplane and fly to wherever they want to go within the country. Which, look,
I think they still have to wear a mask, though.
you know what? Yeah, you're probably right. And I don't understand that logic either. The air in an airplane, and trust me, I know this from personal experience, given the aviation industry that I've been a part of, the air inside that airplane is cleaner than the air outside it because it has, what do they call it? Filters. There's a special kind of filter that filters everything out. The air is very clean. As a matter of fact, it's also very dry, and they have to regulate that as well. It's the air for the comfort of passengers is a big concern for airlines. So there's no way that virus is going to get bounced around from person to person in an airplane. It's
you know what? I don't care.
By the hypo filters. That's it.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the point is the masks have been useless since day one. And to continue the mask, drop the mandate, okay, but why didn't you just say, screw it, just get back on the planes and fly? Really? I mean, if you want to go and see grandma because you haven't seen her in 2 years, or you want to go pay respects to someone who's passed away during the COVID period, go. We're not going to stop you. And that would have been completely fine. But the fact they left the mask mandate in, that'll go too. People just get sick and tired of it, and the airlines have to deal with it. But eventually, people are just going to get sick of the hassle. So it'll die. It'll die its own natural death. But I just was glad to see it finally take place.
Now, my understanding is that, because there was somebody that was telling me today this was a great victory for the truckers in particular who were fighting this. One of the things that they were fighting was this mandate for
right.
travel restrictions with requiring vaccinations for travel, etc. But my understanding is that what the government has not lifted is the vaccination requirement for cross-border truckers. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, if that's the case, and I have no reason to believe it's not, I haven't really looked into it, but my understanding is that's what it is. And if it is the case, I'm thinking, okay, that is just pure vindictiveness.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's it. The government is just all they're doing is they put the knife in and they're twisting it.
Yeah. Why? It never made any sense because the guy is isolated in his truck. He's by himself, by himself. His business is sitting in a cab all day, holding a steering wheel and telling his steering wheel how smart he is, driving up and down the road, delivering all the goods and services that we all need in our everyday lives.
Well,
so how's he going to contaminate anybody?
Well, I think it's worth emphasizing one more time that the vaccination requirement for cross-border trucking, for cross-border truckers, wasn't even implemented until I believe it was December or January, December of last year or January of this year. And in fact, that was the straw that broke the camel's back with the original truck convoy, Freedom Convoy. That was the original protest was, and this is why it was truckers in particular, was because we'd gone 2 years with this quote unquote pandemic, or a year and a half, and nobody required these guys to be vaccinated to transport goods across the border. Now all of a sudden the government implements this mandate, and that these guys are going, what the F, right? No science, no explanation why or whatever. No super spreaders amongst truckers, or anything like that. So what was the point of it? It was as though they were looking around, they were sitting around the cabinet table one day and somebody said, we never got those guys crossing the border. They slipped through the cracks. And all of a sudden everybody went, oh, we better implement some sort of a mandate with those guys too. So they did. And that was the event that lit the fuse with the Freedom Convoy.
Yeah,
we
that
all
was
know what happened with the Freedom Convoy afterwards. But my understanding, as I said, Nick, is that particular mandate is still required. The vaccination requirement is still in place for these guys. And all I'm saying is, if that's the case, I mean, that is so cynical, so vindictive.
no kidding.
There's just no justification for it.
No, of course not. There never was. And the one thing is, speaking of the truckers' protest, the minister involved in excuse me, in all of this, somebody in the Liberal government, I won't say the minister involved, but somebody in the Liberal government admitted today, or yesterday or today, that they did not, in fact, receive any advice from the police
Right.
about mandating the putting in place the Emergency Measures Act. The guy lied.
So why? Yeah, it's a cabinet decision, and the minister had been saying of public safety had been saying to the House of Commons that that law enforcement had asked for this,
right?
And of course, no law enforcement agency had asked for it. But all of this stuff, there are committee hearings going on about this now, as we speak here in Parliament. And you know, this is a separate topic altogether, Nick, but I'm flabbergasted because some of these revelations are bombshell revelations.
They would have brought down any other government.
The Canadian media seems to be more concerned about the January 6th insurrection hearings in Washington.
The ratings
and I'm
for
going,
that,
okay,
by the way.
Look, I get the ratings thing. Okay, Global's going to cover it. CTV's going to cover it. Other
Nobody's
networks
watching it.
But CBC, the CBC is supposed to be the national public broadcaster. We pay them a lot of money, okay? Because I know what the other guys are going to come back and say. Well, we have to be concerned about ratings, and people are more interested in what was going on in Washington than they are interested in what's going on in these committee hearings in Ottawa.
They may make that argument, Joseph, but it's not true. Nobody's watching these things.
Okay, but whatever. It's not an illogical, it's not an unreasonable argument, okay? So let's just say, for the sake of the point I'm making, that it is true. People are watching the American channels because they're interested, or they're watching the Canadian coverage of these hearings down in Washington, okay? So I can understand if you're CTV and you're a private corporation, you're going to be concerned about ratings. But if you're the CBC, okay, we pay you a huge amount of money every year because we understand that you're going to be covering stories that maybe are not going to get the great ratings. And so you're not going to get the ad revenue, and you're not going to get all of that stuff. But you're doing a service. It's a public service. And that's why you're a national broadcaster. That's why we pay you. So the point I'm making is, once again, the CBC, that should be covering these hearings in the Canadian Parliament, they should be covering these hearings wall to wall, okay? And they should be informing Canadians of what's going on in their government here in Ottawa and how the decisions are being made, good or bad. But they're not. And instead, they're telling us what's going on in Washington. I don't care. I'm paying you guys to do this service for Canadians.
This is just deflection by the CBC because they don't want to bite the hand that feeds it, because they know if when this government falls and the Tories go on to win, their funding is at risk.
I don't believe, you know what? I've been around too long to buy into that, Nick. In theory, maybe, but you know, they still got a whole lot of money under the Conservatives under Stephen Harper.
But they're not. Look, you're talking about the CBC. They think from a liberal point of view, and any threat, even a minor, even if it's just a reduction in the rate of increase, they will call a cut.
I don't think so. I mean, I hear what you're saying,
You
Nick.
mark my words.
Listen, let me tell you something, okay? I hear this all the time. I'm not defending the CBC, okay? But what I'm saying is that's to me, that's too simple. There's amongst conservatives, there's a little bit too much conspiracy theory when it comes to outlets like the CBC. I'm not defending them, But I'm saying the problem is much deeper than that. And I think that like the rest of the networks, the reason they're covering whatever's going on in the States before they cover whatever's going on in Canada is simply because that's where their head is at, and they just think it's more important.
There is a fascination for covering American politics. That's for sure.
And all I'm saying is, I don't care. We pay you guys in the CBC a lot of money to give us preferential coverage of what's happening in Canada. So these committee hearings are important, okay? And the revelations that have come from them already can only be described as bombshell revelations. But nobody's hearing about them because our national broadcaster of all people, of all organizations, isn't covering the story in depth.
I'm not surprised. You know what? I'm not surprised at that. If they will not cover the Pfizer document dump, and go through it with a fine-tooth comb to find out what's in it and what we should know about it, then they're not going to cover this. There is a certain narrative that they want to follow, and I believe it's smoke and mirrors and deflection. And that there is certainly a fascination, almost a morbid one, with watching what's going on in the States. And Craig's point, I think it was Craig who made it earlier, about how this is just a Hollywood production. These hearings in the United States about January 6th, nobody's watching it. First of all, secondly, it's nothing but a sham. But people in Canada, whether it be CBC or anybody else, are fascinated with studying and almost from a better than thou attitude, pointing to the Americans to say, see, we're not like that. And in fact, we're not like that. We're worse because we won't cover our own messes, which is the point you're making.
Sure. And the government's reaction to the Freedom Convoy was far worse than anything that happened in the United States on January 6th. So I'm really hesitant to get into a discussion or a debate about whether or not there was a real insurrection and all that stuff. I have very strong views on that, but I'm setting all of that aside because I'm just saying, okay, what happened in the United States and Washington on January 6th could have been, for the sake of argument, let's just say it was the worst possible thing that could have happened in the United States, the most horrendous, awesome, terrible thing that happened in the United States since the assassination of
John F. Kennedy.
John Kennedy, okay? Or since the Civil War. Come up with whatever hyperbolic characterization you want to come up with. It still shouldn't be covered by the CBC. It should be the CBC. We pay them to cover preferentially what's going on here in Canada. And don't tell me that Canadians don't care about this. Partly Canadians don't care about what's going on here in Canada because they're not being told about what's going on here in Canada.
Yeah, it's
so
hard.
I don't care what the ratings are, but the CBC should be covering these hearings wall to wall. And they, frankly, they should be covering much, much more of committee hearings here in Canada, period. Okay? Because committees in Canada, parliamentary committees in Canada have the same kind of power, if not more, than congressional committees do in the United States. The Americans exercise their power. We don't. But committees here in Canada could call witnesses. They can subpoena witnesses. If people don't show up, they can put them in prison for contempt of Parliament. Okay, so I'm not saying that they should be doing all of these things, but I'm saying these meetings, these committee meetings, these committee hearings are important. And the revelations and getting to the bottom of what happened with the invocation of the Emergencies Act is important, and people need to hear about this.
All right, well, Joseph, I'm going to stop you there because guess what? That's the end of our show. It's been another blazingly fast 2 hours. I certainly want to thank everybody who joined us, whether online in the chat room or listening via the internet or listening to this later on a podcast. We certainly appreciate you being there, and tell your friends and your enemies and your family, and even tell your mother-in-law if you want, and have them join us, because the bigger the audience, the more influence we can have, and the more people will hear the best doggone talk show in Canada when it comes to conservative politics. With that said, I'll say goodnight for Joseph and I. And for John, thank you, Mr. Melky, behind the scenes. It's been a great show. I certainly appreciate it all. So we'll see you all next week. Have a great week. And in the meantime, ubicaritas ad amor, Deus sibi est. Good evening. God bless. Don't let anything disturb your peace. And may you have a fair wind and a following sea.